Hi, I'm Jamie Benning. I run a site called filmumentaries.com where I take classic 70s and 80s movies and turn them into the ultimate making of documentary.
Jamie, just to get started off, so where did the ideas for the filmumentaries come from? How did you get started off?
Well, I'm a big fan of movies and I grew up, in the 80s. So I've watched many movies again and again and again with my family, a lot of those 70s and 80s blockbusters. And then, of course, revisited them on DVD. And of course, with DVDs, you would get things like special features, you'd get commentary tracks, you get still galleries, you'd get behind the scenes featurettes. And I was kind of a bit disillusioned after a while. I thought, there's all this stuff out there. There must be a way of pooling it all together to make it a more interesting watch. So that's what I did with Building Empire. Partly it was to teach myself Apple Final Cut Pro because I'm an editor, a live editor, and I didn't have any post-production experience. So I set about doing Building Empire by just collating all of the behind-the-scenes material that I could for Empire Strikes Back. Kind of an experiment, really, and then I put it online on a few Star Wars forums, and it kind of took off from there and led me on to doing another 4 of them, so five of them. Yeah, I can't count.
Inside Jaws, Building Empire, Return to Jedi.
Raiding the Lost Ark, yeah.
Actually,
Stiles Begins.
I teach a film class, and I use Raiding the Lost Ark to teach them pre-production because you have because you have the meetings between Kasdan and Lucas and Spielberg. All part of that, so that gets to take me from, you take us from storyboarding to coming up with the conceptual ideas to then being able to see the finished film. And again, it's a great resource because you intercut the film and they start to see how how everything links together. And was it your idea to almost kind of do them like a sort of visual director's commentary? Was that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I just thought that you've got these people talking, but you don't necessarily know who they are in an audio commentary. So, just fleshing it out with stills and behind the scenes material. It's always a thing as a kid. I would watch these behind the scenes videos, and you'd think, "Wow, that looks really rubbish. Why does it look rubbish on a TV camera? And then when it's on a film camera, why does it look amazing? How does this all fit together?" And I found just by putting those TV clips, those behind the scenes featurette clips in the context of the movie in the right place, it just fleshes it out more and it just makes it a more engaging making of documentary experience. And I just like the idea of watching the film being made as you're watching it. When you watch them with something different in the, you're expecting the next musical note, or you're expecting the next piece of dialogue or the next scene, and suddenly something else pops up. It's just kind of interesting to me as a viewer. So hopefully interesting to other people as well.
After Building Empire came out, did that help you get access to some more of the kind of rare stuff that you've got in your documentaries? Like, how did you find some of that stuff?
Well, I used to be a member of a forum, well, I still am, but I don't visit it very often, a forum called originaltrilogy.com, and it was this group that got together that wanted to get the original unaltered trilogy released in its unaltered form, no special editions or anything like that. And then it just became this real fan community, and there'd be people from Denmark and Germany and France and Canada and the US, and we'd all swap video clips with each other. I had a recording of something that was only here in the UK. I think it was The Big Breakfast back in the 90s when they re-released the movie. So there's Mark Hamill talking and Carrie Fisher talking on the sofa with Denise Van Houten. And then the guy in Denmark would say, "Oh, I've got this morning show from Denmark and it's all in English." And so he'd send me clips of that. And suddenly I started to realize that, I've got all of these different pieces of interview throughout the ages. And and just by releasing Building Empire, it then got people into interacting with me and kind of sending me stuff, and I'd swap stuff with them. And before I knew it, I had enough to do the next one, Returning to Jedi.
The detail in them is fantastic, and sort of, I mean, when you look at Empire of Dreams and you look at the stuff you've done, I sort of think you're actually almost a bit more detailed than they were themselves. Does it come from just like breaking down all the officially released stuff and then whatever extra stuff you can find, or what's your process when you're making one?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, the thing I do is I lay down the film on a timeline, in whatever software I'm using, Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro, and then I start to find all the relevant bits and put it together like you know, a puzzle, and then I'll find, you know, that, oh, I've got somebody talking about that at the time, and I've got somebody talking about that retrospectively, and then you start to realize that, you know, this one occurrence happened, you know, this film was made, but there are all these amazingly different perspectives depending on who you are. You know, the credits roll past, there's thousands of people there. Every one of those people has a story about working on that film. And the thing that I liked to kind of push forward was to get not only words from the director, producer, main actors, but all those little bit part people, people you didn't notice that were in the background who may have had an experience. Like in Inside Jaws, you know, I spoke to a woman who was the girlfriend of the props master, and she happened to get a part as a person in a hospital and met and hung out with Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss, you know. And it's stories like that that I love digging up. So yeah, it is like making a puzzle, and initially it's just kind of nuts and bolts. You know, this goes there, that goes there, because that's that scene and that's that scene. But then I end up with such an abundance of material, particularly audio, that I then have to kind of create a narrative that, you know, explains the film as it's being made. Because of course, most films are not being shot in the order that they end up in. So that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes, sort of introducing the film. Maybe the first scene was shot last, and the only interviews I've got about it are people talking about how it was all coming to an end, perhaps. So it starts as a basic puzzle, but then that puzzle has to be adapted, and it becomes like a 3D puzzle, I guess.
Was there anything that you ever got from any other fans or people who'd seen your work that you really got excited at? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I've got this?
There was one actually with Stiles Begins. I released it in 2011, but I've been working on it for about 4 years because I lost a hard drive and had to rebuild it, and lost motivation and strength, and you know, loads of things. I had kids in the meantime. But one thing that got me really going again with it was that there was this scene with Harrison Ford and an Irish actor, Declan Mulholland, who played
Jabba the Hutt.
human Jabba the Hutt. Yeah.
Come out of there, Solo! Solo!
Right here, Java. Been waiting for you.
Have you not?
Now, we'd all seen the scene from the official documentary from Star Wars to Jedi, the making of a saga from 1986 or 7, I think it is. There are little snippets of it. And when they re-released the Star Wars Special Edition in 97, they then showed how then they matted over this really crappy CGI Jabba the Hutt. But they didn't ever complete the sequence. The sequence was never there as a whole. There was some of it on a CD-ROM that LucasArts released. There was some on this documentary about the special edition. There was some on I had recorded from an ITV show, and it was missing this final kind of 30, 40 seconds. So I'm on the forum one day, and this guy from Canada says, "Oh, I've got the end of that scene, but that's the only bit I've got." And I said, "Well, listen, I'll give you the rest of the scene. You give me the end." And he sent me the end of this scene, and it was on a show on cable, on Paramount or something, and there's credits rolling by like it's the end of the show. And there's just this scene, this final scene, where you see him talking to Jabba saying, you know, trying to do this bargaining, and he says, Harrison Ford says, "You're a wonderful human being." And obviously he is a human being in this case because there's a big Irish actor there. Yeah, that is still the only place that you can see that entire scene complete. It's not been released on the Blu-rays, it's not on the DVDs, it's not online anywhere. So Star Wars Begins is I think people have since snipped it and put it on YouTube as their own. But